Welcome everyone to the Wisconsin Whistle. I'm your host Dan Dyhard Vachalek. The NIL that got approved for high school athletes in Wisconsin. We joined 40 states in that, so I'll talk about that in today's show. The Brewers, after having some, struggles, would be to put it lightly, from offense, pitching, fielding, just everywhere you look. Recently against both Chicago teams, going 21 scoreless innings before finally scoring a run. Just looking just terrible. The Brewers did bounce back with 3 consecutive victories, got a series win. Unfortunate game today, but we'll dive into that a little bit as well. Didn't really get the news we wanted yet with the Bucks, but do want to discuss Giannis' future possibilities, some Doc Rivers stuff, just Bucks stuff in general. And the Packers conducted their rookie mini camp this past week. Did some more research on their players. Did a couple good stories came out. So I do want to tap in on that a little bit as well. You got to always talk about the big number one sport in Wisconsin, the Green Bay Packers. So definitely want to bring that into discussion. But NIL for Wisconsin high school athletes is the big topic for this week. And I'll tell you all about it, what we should expect from that, what are the rules, what was approved, what wasn't, what can they do, can't do. It's definitely a changing landscape in not only college athletics, but also in high school athletics. So we got that and more, so stay tuned. Oh, I gotta fix this again. Okay, there we go. Well, I'll just have the whole screen. Welcome everyone to the Wisconsin Whistle. I'm your host, Dan Vachalek, aka Dyhard. So NIL got approved in Wisconsin, 293 to 108 vote. They approved for high school athletes. Wisconsin now becomes one of 40 states rather. There's 39 other states, including Wisconsin, that have NIL for high school athletes. A lot of different rules and regulations in there. The one that I do want to tease a little bit before we hear a word from our sponsors on this is they cannot hire agents, and NIL cannot interfere with school, academic, or team commitments and obligations. Now, interfering with school, academic, and team commitments and obligations is completely normal. You can't, advertise for the local car dealership at the same time you're trying to practice or play a game. That makes no sense and defeats the NIL purpose. But not hiring agents is what I do want to discuss, and I will discuss that after the message from our sponsors. Also, in this show, we'll be talking about the Brewers' 21 consecutive innings without scoring. However, they won Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday and lost today. Pat Murphy did say something that kind of wasn't surprising and, needed to be said is they lost their edge. And I definitely agree as the pitching fell apart, hitting disappeared. We went cold. And the defense looked like Little League, and, that's been a problem. Also, there was some news that came out today with William Contreras, the catcher. He said he will play through it, though, but he does have a fractured finger. I'm not sure which hand it was. I will let you know after the break. I'll double-check which side. But he has a fractured finger that he will continue playing through. The Packers, they had their rookie mini camp, and something to note before I get into some stuff. Devontae Wyatt, I think, Watts. I call him Devontae Watt. His fifth-year option was picked up. He'll probably get a new contract before fall camp. They'll probably redo his whole deal so he gets paid a little more. However, they do want to pay him out, for his 5th-year option as well. So that could be on the table. Quay Walker's 5th year was declined. However, they do want to talk about a new contract with him and keep him around, probably less than what the 5th-year option would be. Devontae Watt, I would say their new contract's probably going to be a little more than what the 5th-year option was, so they want to lock that in. The other thing as well with that is there was a 6'9" punter. Yes, 6'9" punter, Brendan Hall. Packers already have Daniel Whelan, who was great last year. They have a kicker. Not really sure where Brendan Hall is going to fit in, but he's 6'9". So I don't know. Throw the guy down on special teams. You're on the 1-yard line, just something. I don't know. There's not really a spot for him. It's just fun banter and stuff. There was a guy, I think Chris Maddox, who was on the Rich Eisen show today. He was talking about Giannis in the Bucks, and I'll kind of briefly discuss it, and then I'll dive into it right after this break. But he said that Giannis has not talked to the Bucks yet about the future if he does want to get traded. Obviously, he's under contract, so if the Bucks say no, we're not trading you, he's stuck. But he did not talk to the Bucks yet about his future in Milwaukee. If he does want to pursue a trade option, if he does want to stay, so they're kind of letting the dust settle on the season. Still, the playoffs are still going. Not for the Bucks, obviously, but other teams. Pacers are, unfortunately, the Cavaliers have had some injuries. Pacers are winning. Steph is out game 2, maybe game 3 as well. So different teams are having injury problems right now, which the Bucks are not unfamiliar with, especially the last, 2022. We had Chris Middleton that had, slipped on water or whatever, got hurt. The next year, Giannis was hurt. The next year after that, Giannis and Dame were both hurt in the playoffs. And now this year, Dame got hurt, and the Bucks just looked horrible. Defensively, offense wasn't clicking. It just wasn't it. So they're kind of letting the dust settle on that. I expect that's the same reason why Doc Rivers is not, we haven't announced anything with Doc Rivers. I would be absolutely shocked if Doc Rivers stays with the Bucks another year. I'll be mad as well. That will be another very mad moment, but I'll be shocked if he stays with the Bucks. And, but Chris Maddox was also saying that right now is probably the best time to trade Giannis if the Bucks were going to go that route. And that's not just because, Giannis might be ready or whatever the case, but Giannis has 2 years still left on his contract, which means that whatever team would would trade for him, no matter if they're a small market or not a big market or a major market that Giannis really would want to play for, if he goes to OKC or if he goes to Houston, but he wants to go to New York or LA, they at least have 2 years with Giannis before he's a free agent, can go get huge money and say, oh yeah, I'm leaving, goodbye. So right now, Chris Maddox was saying that this is probably the best time for the Bucks to trade Giannis. They'll get the most value for Giannis right now. I agree with that point. However, I don't think it would be Milwaukee's best to trade Giannis. But you're listening to the Wisconsin Whistle on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. I want to hear a quick shout out to our sponsors, Planet Jerky, Vital Apparel, Seal the Deal Wax, and then, of course, where you could follow IE Sports Radio. You could follow on at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube, along with IESportsRadio.com. You can find this show at IESportsRadio.com/The Wisconsin Whistle or on YouTube. If you're new to the show, make sure to slap that subscribe button and make a comment in the comment section that you subscribe for the Wisconsin Whistle. I'm your host, Dan Vachalek, a.k.a. Dyhard. We'll be right back.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hi, welcome back, everyone, to the Wisconsin Whistle. I'm your host, Dan Vachalek, a.k.a. Dyhard. So I started off the show, we're saying, NIL in Wisconsin. So we're going to start off with this. It's actually a positive thing, I think, for NIL to become approved for high school Wisconsin athletes. The WIAA approved NIL for Wisconsin high school athletes, which joins 39 other states. Wisconsin is now the 40th state on a 293 to 108 vote. They also approved some other things as well. However, this is going to probably start in about May or June. High school athletes can get paid. However, alumni businesses who have already supported the school, coaches, past coaches, boosters, they're not allowed to give student athletes at their school money. So, that's something different. Also, another thing is, like Amari Allen, he's in a Schwabenon. And then Oshkosh North has Xavion Mitchell. So Amari Allen's going to Alabama for basketball. Xavion Mitchell is going to Iowa State for basketball. And it appears Zach Kinzinger is going to Wisconsin for basketball. Because they're already now going this year, they will not be able to take advantage of the NIL for high school. Why I bring those three names up is because last year, with how big they were, especially getting recruited from Division I schools, Alabama's very good. They were ranked very high, including number 1 this year in college basketball. Iowa State has been pretty good. They made the tournament. And Wisconsin, of course, is the biggest, school outside of Marquette in Wisconsin that has basketball. So getting those players possible money or, NIL deals would have been pretty big for them. Another thing that has the caveat is they cannot hire agents, which I'll get to in a second, but they cannot interfere with school, academic, or team commitments and obligations. The important part with interfering with school, academic, or team commitments and obligations is because in high school, you're there for high school to get a diploma, high school diploma. I don't really know any jobs outside of just, typical whatever, but I don't know of any jobs that will really successfully pay you without a high school diploma unless you go into, working for yourself. Then it doesn't matter what your education is, as long as you can do, work for yourself and do well. But so that makes a lot of sense. However, not hiring Asians doesn't make any sense to me at all, because how do, okay, let's say I own a car dealership and I want to have, I'm in, I don't know, the middle of the state, and I can't get Packers or big name players to represent me. They want too much money. So I want to go now because I can, the local high school football players or basketball players or whatever that are known around the community. How do I reach them? Do I stalk these players, after practice? Do I have to sit and wait for the practice? Do I have to wait for after the game and approach them? Do I have to contact the school? I'm kind of curious at how these players, or rather students, are going to get proper NIL deals if, they can't hire Asians to run this. You're going to run into the problem too, where I believe Nico Iamaleava, he ran into this issue where I guess his family was getting told, hey, you could get a lot more money. I don't know if it was an agent that told his family or how exactly this went about, but his family got, wise to, hey, instead of $2 million, you could be getting $4 million. And there's deals out there for you for the $4 million. So he tried to implement something and be the first guy to hold out in college. And as everyone saw, that didn't work, because the only team that took him was UCLA. Now, I don't know, this is speculation, I think from the article writer, but I had read that he actually took a pay cut going to UCLA. So, that didn't really work out too well. Now he's making under $2 million a year, which he would have been making at Tennessee. Also, Sports Illustrated posted something either yesterday or Monday that talked about the top 10 players for the upcoming draft at quarterback, and he was number 7 on there. So why this is relevant is because if that's his parents or his dad or mom or whoever is dictating, hey, you got to go get more money. Hey, you got to go do this. Now hold out and go get. Why would not, if that's happening at college level where these players are adults, like legal adults, 18 plus is a legal adult, can make their own decisions, live, get loan, whatever the case is, they're 18. They can't drink, obviously, or own a pistol, but they could do whatever they want as full-grown adults. So why at, 17, 16, 15, 14, are you going to let these parents dictate where they go? No, we need some more money. Go over there and, you're going to be their sponsor. Go over there and you're going to be theirs. No, we need more money. Well, you better perform better. It's a lot of, it just poses a lot of issues, I think, to not having an agent run these players and having parents who probably don't have any experience in running these deals properly. They might say, yeah, well, my son's going to score 30 points tonight. If he does he get more money or, this and that? And then when he doesn't, is that a problem? Or if he does, and they're like, well, no, this is the contract. And now the parent has a problem. It's just way too much of a possibility of problems if you don't have agents managing this and running it. A player's not happy that he's not getting paid as much as another player on his team. So he wants to move on to a different school. He wants to do what he wants to do. That's fine. But, if you have an agent, you might not have, you might not know that this other player on your team is getting recruited by 12 different D1 schools, and you're only getting recruited by, FCS or, D2 or D3 schools. And, obviously you're not going to be as prominent, or, maybe the community just doesn't like you as much. Maybe, that dad has connections to all these certain people and your parents don't have any connections, or, you grew up and you were a trouble child in elementary school while this guy was, a saint all the way through school. Is that fair if if you are now at the same level as him, but because they remember, in elementary school, he was a problem, they don't want to deal with you. I think it's a lot easier if you have an agent, especially, college has agents. They pick them. I mean, from what I've heard, they pick these agents right out of high school. I mean, right when you're going to picking a school for college, they're getting agents. NFL, professional, basketball, baseball, they all represented by agents. Obviously, you have a couple people like Lamar Jackson. He's one of the first prominent people to represent himself, but you don't have many athletes that are representing themselves. You don't have a lot of players that have, relatives representing them. They have agents. So if you're going to put this in high school, they need to have agents. Otherwise, A, how do you contact these players? B, what are you going to see from parents trying to push their way through? Now it's okay. Let's say, I have a lot of money and my son isn't the best at the sport, and an average player, but I have a lot of money and connections. Well, I want more, and I want him to have a lot too. So I'm going to use that to get him on all these, ads and NIL deals and everything. And now I'm going to pay this, company or this business, hey, my son needs to be on here. And I'm going to pay them because I have money or I have a connection or I could shut that business down really quickly. Any type of scenario. These are going to come up. And if I could do that, but now the star doesn't get anything, but he deserves everything, now we have there's extra problems. Not only does that star probably have a problem with the student, maybe the school might become involved, even though they shouldn't be, coaches, other parents. It's just a lot of problems, I think, that could happen until you have agents that, can handle everything on a neutral playing field instead of, parents who obviously there's a lot of corrupt things that will go on. Everything done in the dark comes to the light, but it's just a lot of problems I foresee. You see a lot of Hollywood actors as children have problems with their parents stealing money, stuff like that. Having to do extra stuff just for the money for their parents because their parents are pushing it on them. Without agents, it's going to be a big problem. Another thing, though, with regards to the NIL, so it should start in May this month. They're projecting maybe June. But because of NIL, I think this is part of the NIL thing as well, but it was a separate amendment that was issued. So coaches can now have contact with athletes in the summer from June 1st through the 30th, and then from the 7th to the 31st. The other thing with that is July 1st through the 6th, coaches cannot contact their players unless they're in season, but I'm not sure what's in season then. And football coaches are restricted from contact 1 week before the start of fall training camp. If that starts at the beginning of August, which a lot of them do, obviously that last week of July, they can't contact them. Along with that is allowing freshmen to play the same amount of games as JV and varsity teams. Obviously, for everyone who's not really familiar, high schools usually, especially for baseball, basketball, and football, the smaller, I wouldn't say smaller sports because soccer is not small, but I know soccer was like JV and varsity, and that was it. There wasn't a freshman soccer at my high school that I remember of. Like track and field doesn't really have a freshman JV. Swimming, I don't think had that. What else? I know bowling had a JV and varsity team. I was on varsity. I can't think, I don't know. I don't think tennis had any variants, but football is the biggest one that I know of. Baseball as well is a big one, and baseball is understandable because, you're 14, 15, you're not going to be playing against 18-year-olds throwing 95, who could be going to the MLB draft in the spring. And you're going to be playing against these guys. They're throwing 95 with 21-inch drops on pitches, and they're full-grown men at this point. And you're 14, 15, still developing. That's not fair unless you are that talented. But that's not common, especially even the MLB getting drafted out of high school. While it appears common watching the MLB draft, it's not common to see around, the state frequently, especially in Wisconsin. We don't play year round. It gets cold a lot. We have a lot of snow. I don't really see too many high school athletes getting drafted out of Wisconsin. Obviously there are some, but freshmen can play the same amount of games as JV and varsity. I like that. It gets them prepared more so for varsity, for JV. You don't have them playing 8 where everyone else plays 12. I agree with that. I think that they need to play the same amount, should be equal across all 3 fields. I get the logistics of it. It's harder to get 3 games all locked in, especially on a Friday night where you have, you do have school, then they have extracurriculars or whatever the case is. But usually it's a JV game and then a varsity game after that. The game could be 2 hours. So our freshmen starting at 3 o'clock, but you're still in school until 2:50. That doesn't make a lot of sense. But JV, I think, starts usually around 5. 5:30, and then varsity is usually 7 or 8 o'clock. So there's not really a lot of room to get 3 teams in there. Maybe Thursdays are freshmen, Fridays. I remember football. The varsity game was always Friday. JV was usually Thursdays, or they would play at the opposite team's facility for JV. Freshmen would be on a Saturday or would be on the Thursday, and varsities on the Saturday. It would just depend on that. But usually Friday Night Lights is varsity. That's usually when the game is. That's what everyone actually cares to watch. Nobody really, unless your kid is on the team or you go to school there and you got friends on the team and stuff, a lot of people aren't really, dying to go see the freshman or JV team. That's more so for their experience so they can get up to varsity and be well prepared, especially baseball, having that, and plus just in general. Extracurriculars are something fun for the kids. It's, they're not 90% of them, 99% of them are not going to go, to a big school and play big time. They might go to a smaller school and just, try it and see if they get on. Most people I knew who played high school, they didn't play in college. They might have tried, but didn't. Most of them just didn't. And then even if you do make it to college, getting to the NFL is another 1% of college players. So like you're 1% of the 1%, that your odds are very slim. So let them play. I know they do play 3 sports. A lot of students will do 3 sports as well in high school. So why not let them play as many games as they can get? By senior year, a lot of them do drop off. They might not play and stuff, and it is what it is. But as freshmen and stuff, and they want to have fun and play with their friends and stuff, let them play as many games as they can. Another change I like as well. So if a spectator is ejected, 1 game suspension for that spectator, and they have to complete the National Federation of State High School Association sportsmanship course. And before they could get back to the home stadium. Now, I don't know how away games work with this. I don't really know how you could track that either. That's very difficult, especially because if I'm buying a ticket or if I'm going to go see a different school's game, I don't have to show them an ID or let them know who I am. I could just show up. So unless the school, I guess, knows you or whatever, I just feel like this is kind of hard to really enforce, but I do like it overall. I like the principle of it. So they must submit a certificate showing completion of the course before coming back. I've been at a lot of sporting events through high school. I umpired in, Little League. I've umpired some, I wouldn't say high school games, but high school age kids who played Little League. Umpired those games. Did some football games as well for like 6th, 7th graders and stuff. And, the parents are very, very, very rough. I was in high school myself umpiring these games, and I just remember parents would yell at you like it's the professionals. Well, I'm sorry, but my strike zone isn't perfect because the ball is a hoop. I mean, the ball is going like this. I can't be perfect on that because by the time it crosses the front half of the plate, the ball's at the guy's eyes. But by the time it crosses the back half of the plate, it's right down the middle. So it's kind of hard to tell. So I'm going off of where it is at the front, and especially if their kid is pitching, everything should be a strike and I can't see and I'm an idiot. And then, if their kid's up to bat, well, everything's a ball and I can't see and I'm an idiot. And of course, every parent has the best athlete in the world as a kid. And wow, that's great to believe. It's not true. Most of the kids are not very good. The parents that think their kids are the best are usually the kids that go play in the outfield and in Little League. And the outfield is where no good players play, but you have to play them because it's Little League. So, if you get ejected out of a high school athletic sporting event, you clearly went over the top. You clearly were very, very just obscene. You did something across the line, and usually there's a lot of leeway in those, unless the umpire or the referee just, I don't know, wants to dominate his power or something, and you said, what the hell are you looking at? And he says, well, get out of here, you're gone. Obviously, that's stupid to make you do a sportsmanship course, because you're just asking the ump or ref what he's looking at, because clearly he's not looking at the game. But usually if you're getting ejected, you're doing something that you need to really probably take this course and know, hey, these are kids at the end of the day. I hope you don't have money on this. Obviously, you can't go bet usually at like Pato, or you can't go bet at, FanDuel or, MGM or whatever. You can't bet on high school athletics usually, at least that I've seen, unless it's like a national championship game in the country or something. Maybe you could bet on that. But most of the time I don't see, I'm not seeing betting in high school unless it's between, parent and parent or something under the table. So if you're screaming and yelling at the ump and the referee and you get ejected, you definitely need to show this sportsmanship course. I think better enforcement would be once they, hey, you got to show your ID when you do walk there, so they could have like a name for all the teams. So if you do, go to away games, if you haven't completed that course, you cannot also go to away games and home games. So this is my fiance who comments and listens. So I appreciate her listening and commenting. But this is definitely true. As long as you're trying as a kid, you can always get better. That's definitely true. That is 100% a fact. I know kids are at different levels, but that's the one thing that you always do need to do as a student athlete, is just keep trying, put your all into it. Like I said, 99% of student athletes is, kids. I'd say even 99.9% aren't going to go to the majors. Just will not happen. They're not going to go to the NFL, NBA, Major League, National Hockey League. They're not going to go to the European Soccer League. They might not go to MLS. They're not going professional. So why not give it your all? Keep practicing and be the best that you can. The other thing as well for WIAA athletes with these amendments is WIAA athletes, which is the Wisconsin, I don't know what it stands for, honestly, but it's the Wisconsin High School Association or whatever. They cannot wear the team uniform, use school or WIAA logos in ads. They cannot promote alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, or weapons. Clearly, that makes a lot of sense. If you're under 18, or actually it's 21 now, but if you're under 18, outside of hunting, you shouldn't really be in possession of a weapon. If you're under 21, you should not be in possession of marijuana, and it's illegal in Wisconsin. So that completely makes a lot of sense. Under 21, you should not be in possession of tobacco. That, again, is against the law. So is alcohol. You cannot serve or drink or consume alcohol under the age of 21. So if you got a high schooler who's 16, 17, promoting alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, or weapons, clearly that's an issue. Not only is it an issue for, I don't want my kid promoting that, any of that stuff. I don't care how much they're paying them. Don't want them promoting that. Once they're 18, they can make their own decisions. But don't want them using any of that, promoting it under 18. They're still developing. So clearly that's an issue, along with now you're legally having an issue as well. And if you're putting yourself on TV, you're putting yourself in a newspaper with you holding a blunt, with you holding a cigarette, with you holding a big Crown Royal bottle, and you're 16, well, everyone can see that you're now promoting illegal activity, and there's no place in athletics for that. But and the weapons, obviously, 18, it would be a pistol only is, not a pistol. Pistol's 21. It would be like a shotgun or like an AR rifle as well at 18 through 20. But again, you can also be under supervision of an adult under the age of 18 to go hunting in Wisconsin. You have to have your permits and everything. But again, I don't believe that you should be promoting guns under 18 unless, you are an adult and know how to do this stuff. But if you're in high school, it's just no place for any of that. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to dive into some Packers rookie mini camp. I do want to talk about some of the Brewers' struggles here, and then I'll wrap it up with a couple things on the Bucks. And you're listening to the Wisconsin Whistle on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Are you a fan of volleyball? Are you a fan of Thunder Spikes? Then I have the show for you. Set Point, where I cover NCAA men's and women's volleyball, high school boys and girls volleyball, beach volleyball, and even professional volleyball. Catch the action every week here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Whistle. I'm your host, Dan Vachalek, a.k.a. Dyhard. So the Packers mini camp started this week. There was one player to note, the 6'9" punter, Brendan Hall. Obviously, he's probably not going to make the team. I don't think he's going to make the practice squad either, but because they have Daniel Whelan. But it is an interesting guy just because he's 6'9". You usually don't have a punter that's that tall. That usually is a big offensive or defensive lineman, usually offense, or maybe a tight end might be that tall. But so that was just an anomaly. But I thought that was pretty interesting that he was there. However, any video I saw, I did not see him punt the ball. So, that would have been fun to see what his leg can do, especially at 6'9". I'm sure he generates a ton of power. Also in news, Golden will wear number 22 in Green Bay. He said that his grandma's favorite number was number 2. So number 2 is taken by Malik Willis. He didn't want to approach him about number 2. He did not want to use 81 because he wants to do number 2 on there. So he's going to wear number 22. He said that just felt like a perfect opportunity to put 2 dudes on there. And just to note as well, so he's got a 4.29 40. McCole Hardman, who we just signed, is 4.33 40. Bo Melton is a 4.34 40. And Christian Watson, even though he's going to miss most of the season, he's at a 4.36 40. So you have those 4 while Bo Melton is on the cusp of, possibly getting relegated to practice squad or not making the roster. I personally think that he's a lock for the roster. But if Christian Watson does come back healthy at some point in the season, you have 4 very, very fast receivers under 4.4 40s. That's incredibly fast for, your receiving core. Tucker Kraft is not slow. I don't think Luke Musgrave is slow from what I've watched them play as well. They don't play at slow speeds. Their 40s might not be, the fastest that fast like this, but that's a threat. As you've seen teams with very fast players, that's a threat. They can get right past all the defenders. They can get past everything. That's definitely a threat. One problem, though, that people are bringing up is, so Savion Williams, just to note with him, he actually wanted to come to Green Bay the entire time. He said he's from a small town, like the small town atmosphere of Green Bay, and that was the team he wanted to get drafted for. They happened to pick him. That's a fantastic story, along with the story of Micah Robinson that I'll get into after this. But Savion Williams has a 10% drop rate in college. So he dropped balls, 1 every 10 balls he dropped. Golden has a 9% drop rate, but if you read the scouting reports on both these players, they say, well, Williams, obviously he was running out of the Wildcat, had runs. He was not experienced, as experienced route running. And, his hands aren't solidified yet in the receiving game. But Golden was, praised for his hands, praised, he could catch everything. He was the leader. But they have a 1% drop rate difference per the stat sheet. Now, obviously, you'd have to dive into the tape and look at, okay, where do these drops come from? Where do these drops come from? If Gold is dropping 9% of passes at Texas with, Ewers or Archie Manning throwing to him compared to Williams at TCU with whatever their quarterback is, is that how do you look at that, differently? Does Williams have better hands than Golden? Is this something that we should be alarmed about? Or was it because they were just counting drops as, anything that even barely touched his hand came close to it, whatever the case is. Something to worry or something to note about that, though, is so Adams, I believe when Devontae Adams came into the league, his drop rate in college was somewhat similar or higher than that. And I remember his first year or two, he just kept dropping a lot of passes, and there was a lot of worry about that he's going to be that guy that just keeps dropping the balls thrown to him. And it seemed like just one offseason it clicked, or he did a lot of work, or I don't know what he did with his hands, but he just started catching everything. And now if you look at Devontae Adams, he's catching 12 to 15 passes a game, or he's getting at least 20, 15 throws to a game, and has been a number 1 wide receiver for years and years. So having those percent rates isn't a bad thing. I don't know what's happening. All right, sorry about that. But Adams having that bad, a drop rate the first couple of years, he really just exploded as that number one wide receiver for forever. So is there a reason to worry about these drop rates from these guys? No, not at all. Golden and Williams can definitely figure it out. Also, I've heard that Savion Williams, he actually is probably going to be running out of the outside more so than he is going to be running from the inside or doing like a Deebo Samuels where he's running the ball and everything like that. So I don't think the drop rates for them is something to really worry about too much. However, it has been a topic among local radio stations that I've been listening to. It has been a topic, especially with Savion Williams in some articles that I've been reading. Speaking of Micah Robinson with great stories and flexibility on play. So Micah Robinson could pretty much play special teams, nickel, corner. He could flex on defense. There's been some reports that the Packers are actually looking for their players to be able to flex on defense, play inside, outside, nickel, corner, outside corner, float to kind of like a safety-like role. And they're looking for that where they could rotate just like their offensive line can rotate different positions. They're looking for their secondary to be able to rotate different positions as well. Well, Micah Robinson could flex on all of those. They also said, and that I was reading in this same article about that, Micah Robinson is a film junkie. I love to hear that, especially in football, because football, to me, outside of actually physically practicing and preparing yourself for each week, having film and watching film is very important in my mind. You're going to know what the team looks like. You're going to know how they run different formations. If you watch enough film, you'll start to memorize this stuff in your head over and over and over again. He worked with Caleb Ransaw in college. He was a third-round pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Micah Robinson actually only had one pre-draft visit, and that was to the Packers, who ended up drafting him. The other thing is he transferred in college. I believe it was Tulane. Tulane was the only team or only school that had him visit, and that's where he went and got drafted out of. So, one team is all it takes, and that's exactly his story there. Another guy who's noticeable, who made 42 starts in 59 games at Georgia, a 3-year starter, is Nazir Stackhouse, a defensive tackle. He had a 5th or 6th round grade on him by a lot of scouts. However, he didn't even get picked. He's basically a run stuffer that's a space eater, which is great. He was on Georgia's national championship team. He's 6'3", 327. Basically, he's just huge. He's going to shed blocks. He gets into the backfield. It's hard to keep him in front of him. He's got explosiveness. But he can't play every down yet. Obviously, I think, more practice and that can work and stuff. I think, he could fit into Hafley's system. I definitely think that he could fit with the Packers. The other thing, too, is he kind of has some familiarity with Warren Brinson because they both went to Georgia. Is he going to take over from Kenny Clark, Devontae Watt, Carl Brooks, Wooden? I don't think so. They also have James Easter. They also signed Nesta Jade Silvera and Keith Randolph in free agency. However, this is a guy who kind of, I don't know if I'd say turn heads, but I think a lot of people definitely looked at him Something that helps is the experience that he has in Kirby Smart's hybrid fronts. So basically what that is Kirby kind of does different things on the front seven. And if Nazir Stackhouse can move around on the front line, play in a 3-4, play in a 4-3, play in a 2-5, play in a 5-2, if he could do different stuff like that, his value just increases. If he's very heavy run stuffer, his value increases as well. Third is shorts. He's out there. Field goals. He's out there on first downs that they know they're going to run. They need to stop from running the ball. He could get out there. You're playing the Eagles if the tush push, because that got, tabled. If you're playing the Eagles or the Bills, who are the majority teams that do the tush push, bring him out there. Maybe he could get under somebody. Maybe he could just power through and stop it. But definitely this is a guy that I would watch out or pay attention to, rather. I'd pay attention to him, especially when the veterans come out to camp, and then all the way into the fall if he manages to stay on the roster until the fall training camp starts open. And just, it's not really fall when they start in the end of July, but when that training camp before the season starts, definitely somebody that has potential to make the roster as some depth option as well. Obviously, he's not going to, take over Kenny Clark's spot right away, but he's definitely someone that could make the starting roster this year, the 53. And that'd be, that's something to note. Switching gears now, completely switching gears. Football and baseball are two different sports completely. So completely switching gears. So Brewers lost today 9-1. Quinn, I can't think of his name. Let me pull it up here. My internet doesn't want to load. But their pitcher, he's just not getting the job. Quinn Priester, sorry. I was drawing a blank on his name. He's just not getting the job done. I don't think he played that bad to start off with the Brewers. Right away, he was not bad. I thought, okay, when he started, it was against Colorado, though. He only allowed one earned run. Then he played against Detroit, no earned runs. But these last couple starts here, 7 against the Cubs in that 10-0 loss, 5 against the St. Louis Cardinals in the 6-5 loss. He can pitch deep into games, not really, actually. He can pitch a lot of pitches, rather, 100 pitches each the last 2 games before today's game. But he just has he's one of the guys where his ERA is just ballooning. He started off very nice and impressive, and now his ERA is just going up and up and up. And, he had 7 earned in 4 1/3 innings off 6 hits, 2 homers, 4 walks, 4 Ks, and that was against the Cubs, 10-0 loss Friday. So when you look at this game where they lost 9-1, he allowed 3 earned, had 3 walks, 3 strikeouts, and 78 pitches, pitched 5 innings. Then you had Elvin Rodriguez come in, 6 earned, 3 1/3 innings, 5 hits, 4 walks, 2 Ks, gave up a homer, had 74 pitches. And then, it doesn't matter after that. But that's kind of been the story right now is their pitching. You had games where in your games, you're playing the White Sox. You should be able to beat them pretty easily, and you lose 8-0. Then you lose 10-0 to Chicago, the Cubs. Then you lose 6-2. Now, back-to-back games of getting shut out and losing by 8+ runs was the first time in franchise history that's happened, so they set franchise history records. They luckily were able to turn out a win against Chicago 4-0, but this team has lost 4 straight to start off the season and as recently as in San Francisco and St. Louis. Last year, I don't believe the Brewers lost 4 straight at all. I don't believe they got shut out in back-to-back games, which has happened a couple times this season. Actually, it just happened this time. Yep, just happened this time. I haven't seen the Brewers, pitching be this bad. Their bullpen will, come out there. Okay, good. They're good. Then all of a sudden, next game they're just awful. I've seen the Brewers literally put up 17 runs, and I watched them get blown out 20-9, 12-3, 11-1. Then I watched them lose a heartbreak 3-1, and then win 14-1 the next night, and that was against Oakland, or the Athletics, I guess. They started off the series with Chicago pretty nicely, 7-2, 6-4 wins, then lose to the White Sox 8-0, and then I get the Cubs are good, but when you had Peralta on the mound, if that's the only guy that you could rely on, there might be a little bit of a problem on your starting rotation, especially because Peralta just had some situation where he was listed as like day-to-day, just kind of has to monitor him. But he pitched very nicely against the Cubs with 7 Ks in 6 innings, only 1 walk, 4 hits, no runs. Then you had Koenig come in. You had Uribe pitch nicely. You had McGill that closed it out in a 4-0 game. You kind of got to Imanega. Merriweather, you got to him right away too, off 2 hits, 2 earned. And that wasn't home runs either. Then you come against the Astros, and 2 of the games are very nice. 5-1 at the start. You have fantastic pitching in that one. You come out with Tobias Myers, who played very nice. He pitched super nice compared to that last game where, he had 2 innings pitched against the White Sox, allowed 2 runs, and Pat Murphy says there was a message to Tobias. You can't walk the leadoff hitter. You need to be ready, and your changeup needs to be ready from pitch 1. And I agree. You're at the majors. You need to be ready from pitch 1, start 1. You need to be ready, good to go. So I think this really, really fires something under him, because to kick off this game, the start of the series, rather, he had a very, very nice game. 5.1 innings pitched. Yeah, granted, it was 6 hits rather, 2 strikeouts, earned run, but that's fine. But Nick Mears came in with the bases loaded, shut things down, struck him out, had 1 strikeout in 2/3 innings. You had Koenig with a hold. You had Grant Anderson come in with a hold. And then you had Joe Piamps that, has really struggled this year, but he gave up a hit in an inning, but struck out 2 other players or 2 other batters off 19 pitches. His ERA is down to 9.45. That's awful, but to see him at least have a start is very positive. The things that were going wrong, like Pat Murphy said, was they lost their edge. The pitching was horrible. Hitting disappeared completely, and the defense looked like Little League. That was the case where it was a 4-3 game here. And it was just, it looked bad. There was a couple times where throws were just all over the place. The 9th inning, you had a guy singles, and you threw the ball around. And then again, there was the home run that put it up 4-3. And then, it just didn't look good. The defense doesn't look like it's the same defense that we've seen. Granted, there's no errors, but it's just not the same defense that we're kind of used to, especially that the Brewers are going to have to, that Brewers require. I'm going to give you the Brewers lineup. It's a pretty consistent lineup, I'd say, for the most part. And let me know how many big name players you hear here. Jackson Chourio, obviously, he's Jackson Chourio, obviously, he's that big, he's that guy. He got a big contract before he even started. Bryce Turang, William Contreras, Christian Yelich. Those 2 are pretty big names. Bryce Hoskins, the East Coast knows him. Jake Bowers, Isaac Collins, Caleb Durbin, and Joey Ortiz. Obviously, those aren't big names. So if you're running players out that aren't big names, they're not making much money. The Brewers' payroll is under $100 million. You got to have good defense and you got to have pitching. You're not going to have a ton of power. You're not going to have a ton of hits every night, and I'm not expecting that either. Just not. But getting 6 hits, that's not going to win many games. Allowing, 3 runs, 4 runs, 6 runs, I'd say 4 to 6 runs a game. Not going to win many games, especially, your bullpen can't stop anything. You're not going to win many games. Nick Mears has looked pretty good in the times that he's pitched. McGill, I'd say, has been pretty good overall. Abner Uribe is very good again. I think he's been very impressive. Greg Yoho got sent back down to the minors. He just didn't look very good either. And then I was trying to see. So William Contreras, they kind of said there was something wrong with Contreras, but he kept playing. He leads the league in throwing runners out, who's trying to steal. Apparently, at MLB.com Brewer beat writer Adam McKelvey says that William Contreras has been playing with a fractured finger. He had x-rays done following Tuesday's win over the Astros due to increasing pain resulting from the ailment, and it's the fractured middle finger on his catching hand, the left hand. They think that he sustained the injury last season, so it's been ongoing, and he says that he plans to continue catching despite the injury. He wants to play through it. He's going to play through the pain, and he's hitting .242 with an on-base of .358, 3 home runs, 19 RBIs, a slugging .466. After slugging .466 with 23 home runs in 2024. He didn't play today. Obviously, it's a day off for him, though. Eric Haas did hit a home run in his place, but that's something to note because William Contreras has been big-time offense for the Brewers. He's, again, one of the stars. He's leading the league at throwing runners out as well. The Brewers have been pretty good at that. But when you look at games like, the White Sox where it was 8-0, I mean, you have players that just aren't doing anything at all. The 8-0 game was embarrassing. I'm not really upset about the 10-0 game from the Cubs because the Cubs are very, very good this year. But 8-0, I mean, Chad Patrick didn't look very good in that game. Then you had Craig Yoho who came in with 4 walks, 5 earned runs and 3 hits, and that was pretty much the end of him in the majors. It just isn't his time yet. And that's just what the problem with the Brewers is that you keep calling up players and then sending them down, and it's just you want to force things because you're limited on resources. They've dealt with a lot of injuries, granted, but they're starting to get some pitchers back. Nestor Cortez should be back in probably June, some point. Brandon Woodruff should be back next week. You have DL Hall that should be coming back relatively soon. You should be getting these guys back. And Aaron Civale should be coming back. He's starting the rehab assignment in AAA. You should be getting him back pretty soon. Aaron Ashby, you should be getting back pretty soon. He's starting rehab down in Arizona Complex League. So, that's also where DL Hall started the rehab. So you're getting these players back relatively soon, all on the pitching staff. Of course, Aaron Ashby is going to be a reliever, but that should really help alleviate a lot of these problems. That should help alleviate, if you stay healthy at least, that should help alleviate the strings that you have to kind of let loose a little bit because your players aren't performing properly. Craig Yoho probably shouldn't have been up in the majors, but because you have Payamps who you had no trust in, you have other players that are performing. Well, now it's time. Okay, let's see if you could perform. Just like with this Tobias Myers that I said, if he had 2 starts that he looked like this or didn't start, I have to believe Pat Murphy would say goodbye. Go down to AAA or you're not starting. You're coming out of the pen, just because it's, it doesn't seem like Pat Murphy has a lot of tolerance for this type of stuff, especially when he called out the Brewers to say they lost their edge. Then he calls out Tobias Myers and says straight up this is a message to Tobias: be ready. Be ready from pitch one. You can't walk the leadoff hitter, and that was his words. So you're saying that to the media about your players instead of keeping it in house. You're frustrated. You don't have a lot of depth. A lot of room for error here. You don't want to have a lot of room for error, especially when you're a small market team. There isn't a lot of room for error. You have to perform. You have to do the little things, and that's how you're going to win games. Vinny Capra has been up in the majors here, all season. He had a great spring training, but he had an 8th inning single on Monday to snap a 0 for 36 streak. That's not good. Vinny Capra is hitting 0.74. 0.074, sorry. 0.074 is his batting average. He has 4 hits and 54 at-bats. That's terrible. Christian Yelich is batting 197. Jory Ortiz, 175. Granted, Christian Yelich has 6 home runs, which is tied for the team lead. He just hit one on his 15,000th game of his career. He's got 25 RBIs that's leading the team. But 3 doubles, which is cool. But outside of the 6 home runs, he really hasn't done that much. 42 strikeouts leading the team. 197 batting average is not going to cut it. A 0 WAR, you're not really benefiting the team in any way. Joey Ortiz, minus 1.1 WAR. This is according to ESPN. 175 batting average. He has no home runs, 5 RBIs. He gets a lot of starts, 126 at-bats, which is 4th on the team. Garrett Mitchell is on, hopefully should be coming back soon as well. He wasn't really hitting either, though. 206 batting average before he got hurt. Caleb Durbin, 224 batting average. Oliver Dunn before he got dropped down, 167. Eric Haas is actually hitting, but he's only got 24 at-bats. Daz Cameron's still up here. He got called up. In 12 at-bats, he has 2 hits. Well, at least 1 RBI, but, 2 hits, both singles. And 6 strikeouts to 1 walk. It's just 294 strikeouts on the year for the Brewers. And they have 128 walks. That's not really the best, it's not really the best ratio, especially as a team. You're batting 239. Your on-base percentage is 317, which is okay, but it's just not very good. It's not impressive. It's, out of 293 hits, you have more strikeouts than hits on the year as a team, as a collective. 30 home runs. That's not good. That's not good at all. You look at the team and think, okay, they should be doing it. They're not. It's just very disappointing. Then you have pitching. You come in here, you're pitching. You have, Aaron Savali in his 3 innings, obviously, 5 earned, but he got hurt, whatever the case is. But you have Craig Yohu, 5 and 2/3 innings, 6 earned. That's including that one game with 5 earned runs allowed. And that's goodbye. You have to go. You have to go back down. You were dominating AAA, but you come up with a 2.29 whip, a 9.5 ERA, 6 earned, 6 walks to 4 Ks. You have to go down. I'm happy Joe Payamps is starting to kind of regroup and get his ERA, because his ERA in the White Sox series was 10.5. Now it's 9.45. 12 strikeouts, though, with 14 earned and 13 innings pitched. You got to fix that, especially when the Brewers were counting on you to kind of be that closer role with Trevor McGill, be that setup guy, and that's not going to work. You even have Trevor McGill, who, his ERA is not too bad, but as the guy who I guess you would designate as the closer, having 6 walks to 14 Ks isn't exactly, encouraging in my opinion, or a WAR of 0.1. That's not really encouraging to me either. You have Quinn Priester, a 5 ERA, 1.66 whip, 20 strikeouts, 19 walks. As I go down this list, it keeps saying the same thing pretty much. Is like the whole point of this is you need to perform better. As small market teams, especially when you have guys who from one year perform well to the next year don't, or you try to acquire fill-ins and they really don't fill in properly. They start out nice to give you this false sense of hope to just turn around and shit the bed is like, you're not going to win extended games like that in the market that you have to play by. I like Abner Uribe with the 1.62 ERA and 16 inning pitch. I like Nick Mears with the 0.68 ERA and 13 innings pitched. I should never see this, honestly, ever. I don't like seeing this at all, but Jake Bowers has 4 innings pitched with no runs allowed. So in 4 innings pitched, let's compare this. Craig Yohu, 5.2 innings pitched, 9.53 ERA. Connor Thomas, 5 innings pitched, 20.25 ERA because he allowed 12 earned runs in 5 1/3 innings. But you have a first baseman that hasn't allowed any runs, allowed 1 walk and 4 hits. That it doesn't look good for the team. Freddie Peralta has been very good this year. I mean, honestly, that's been the ace. He's been fantastic. And then next up would be Jose Quintana. And after that would be Chad Patrick. But, once you get past those 3, who are you going to start? Aaron Savale's he's on the injured list. Quinn Priester, he doesn't look very good at all. Tyler Alexander, again, not very good. 5 ERA, that's not very good. He has 4 starts. Tobias Myers, you could start him. But, 8 Ks to 7 walks again. And then, you walk the leadoff guy. You have problems. If you're getting pulled on 2 pitches and then getting called out by the manager, I'm happy he pitched well today, but not today, but yesterday or the day, whatever he pitched. I think it was yesterday. But you pitched pretty well. I don't have a problem with you picking up some games here and there, but you can't pitch like how you pitched against the White Sox, where you're walking the leadoff guy, the manager's calling you out. That's not encouraging for fans or the team. One guy I thought the Brewers should have kept up is Logan Henderson. He had that start with 6 innings pitched. He had 9 Ks, only 1 walk, 1.5 ERA, obviously, because, it's 1 run earned. 3 hits, first major league start, looked very, very good. And then the next day he got sent down, and I'm like, man, maybe we should have probably kept him up and, ran that way. Nestor Cortez hopefully will come back. Obviously, like I said last week or the week before, he had that setback. It wasn't really a setback, but he wasn't able to throw. Hasn't resumed throwing. So I haven't heard any updates on him, actually. But timeline-wise, June should be when he comes back. If he pitches like how he pitched against the Yankees to open up his Brewers career, I guess, he can just go. He could just leave because that was awful. But Brandon Woodruff. From everything I've read, the video I've watched with Brandon Woodruff, who should be back soon, that should give the Brewers another ace-like guy. And having 3 or 4 guys who are pitching pretty well, Chad Patrick would be one, then Jose Quintana, and then Freddie Peralta. Having those 3 guys, plus if you have Woodruff, now you have a very, very solid starting rotation. If they could continue that throughout the season, you're looking pretty good. Tobias Myers obviously has 12 innings, so it's not the best. I guess that's not the best look to judge him on. Tyler Alexander has 25 innings, which is pretty high, and Quinn Priester has 28 innings, so you could judge those guys so far. Just like if you're going to judge Jose Quintana on 28 innings, obviously he had that bad start the last game, I believe, against the Cubs, but if you're going to judge them off 28 innings and saying, okay, he's one of our aces, well, yeah, you also have to judge Quinn Priester, who's clearly not one of the aces, who these last couple games, he's just, I don't know where his head is, and I honestly would send him down, but I'd wait on Brandon Woodruff just as, but I wouldn't start him. I don't think I'd start him another game. Elvin Rodriguez, he started 2 games in 18 innings, but he has a 8.68 ERA. This is the type of stuff that, as I get deeper into this, you just can't have. 138 walks. They've allowed 290 hits, and they've struck out 295 batters. Again, that's not the best numbers because I'm expecting strikeouts to be higher. I think that you really should strike a lot of guys out. However, if you're winning games, that's fine. But, having a team ERA of 4.19 isn't the best numbers, especially when you look at their offense and they're doing, striking out more than they're actually physically getting hits. They have 174 runs in 37 games. If you do the math, that's, four runs a game, which is cool, but that's what you're looking at here, 4 runs a game, plus you have 4, you allow 4 runs a game. Now you're playing a lot of close games, and now that comes down to the pitching. And if your pitching isn't good, not going to win. Fielding, I'll just cover fielding real quick. They don't have many errors this year. At least 23 with a 982 fielding percentage. I don't think they've been that bad with fielding. However, recently during their losing streaks, they kind of tend to make some more errors. They tend to just make boneheaded decisions. Joey Ortiz, who's supposed to be that guy, especially on defense, has 4 errors. Bryce Hopkins at first base has 5 errors. Terang's got 3. Oliver Dunn, he's got 2. I'm happy Oliver Dunn doesn't. This wasn't the time for him. Was that Oliver Dunn? Yeah, that was Oliver Dunn. Yeah, that just wasn't his time. He was batting 167. I mean, it's just not time. It wasn't time for him. But, Brewers have some ways. I won't really harp on their loss today as much. However disappointing it was. I know it was, I think 3 or 4 runs came late in the game. It was 3 runs in the 9th. A couple came through the middle of the game. Elvin Rodriguez, that was kind of his problem. You can't be allowing 6 earned runs, especially when they're looking at you to kind of take over from Priester because he can't go more than 5, I guess. And then you're playing against Framber Valdez, who's a pretty good pitcher, historically been a very good pitcher. The Brewers did face Josh Hader. Interesting note, this is the first time he's faced the Brewers at American Family Field since leaving the Brewers, getting traded from the Brewers. And Rice Hoskins got the first Milwaukee Brewers hit off of Josh Hader since Josh Hader has left the Brewers. I thought that was interesting. Eric Haas did have a home run today. He's filling in for William Contreras. Now, William Contreras, just to note, he did not miss this game other than a scheduled rest day. So he was going to miss this game regardless if he was hurt or not. That's going to be quiet for the next it's going to be heavy baseball and some local stuff. Softball for colleges, especially Wisconsin, UW Green Bay. They're hitting tournament time, so I'll probably cover some of that next week. I honestly don't really watch a lot of softball or college baseball. It's just not big here. But I will cover it and give them some love and stuff, especially when they're hitting the tournament time and wrap it up season and giving awards out. Especially there was a freshman on UW Green Bay. I'll talk about her next week, but she won. She was like all freshman team, all league team, one co-player of the year or something, and one co-freshman of the year. So, kudos to her. Kudos to them making the tournament, Badgers and UW Green Bay. UWM baseball is wrapping up their season. Won't make Omaha, but it's it's fun when you got a local team, especially when you got some players from UWM that have made impact in the majors or the minors and stuff. So, big show. Hopefully we get Doc Rivers fired by next show. Then we'll listen to Wisconsin Whistle on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.